What's up, webheads? It's been a couple of weeks since Spider-Man swung his way onto our beloved PS5s. I've finished the game and I'm as ready to review this as Craven is to hunt. Plus, parents, I have the details you need to know in case you're considering buying this for your little web crawler this holiday season. Let's web zip right into it. Spider-Man 2 is in every way a proper sequel. Insomniac was really smart in how they approached this. Actually, I don't know if they planned it this way or if it just happened naturally, but here is what it looks like to me. They had a runaway, groundbreaking success with the first game on the PS4. Then they migrated over to the PS5 hardware and became familiar with the tech by remastering the original game and coming out with a pseudo-sequel, sort of a Spider-Man 1.5 with Miles Morales. They developed new characters and added new special effects and movement animations like Miles' bioelectricity effects and the way he swings and moves through the city differently from Peter Parker. And then once they had laid that groundwork, they produced Spider-Man 2. And on the surface, you might think that it just looks like more of the same thing. And that's not bad because those first two games are some of the best in PlayStation's library. You also wouldn't be entirely wrong. It is in most ways a very familiar experience if you've played the first two games, but you also wouldn't be entirely right, because I think Insomniac took a hard look and really evaluated the structure and flow of the previous entries and made some changes to streamline the Spider-Man experience. I'll give you two examples. One, in the first game, when you would chase down criminals in a car, it would have you dodge and take out each criminal in the car one by one and then mash the square button repeatedly to stop the car from crashing. In this game, you simply dodge one time and then an animation plays where you web all the criminals to the inside of the car and then stop the car with absolutely no button mashing. It's much shorter and completely streamlined to catch the criminals quickly. Second example, they removed the gadget wheel. It's completely gone. You no longer have to slow down, select a gadget, use the gadget, then slow down again, select a different gadget, and use that gadget. It was a fun wheel, but it stopped the action just long enough to take you out of the Spider-Man experience. Now your gadgets are just mapped to your four face buttons, and so are your superpowers. So for both Spider-Man, you hold L1 and tap the appropriate face button to use a superpower, or you hold R1 plus a face button for a gadget. And with this system, you can string together various gadgets and powers without ever slowing down time or stopping the action. Again, it's streamlined. And at first I wasn't sure I liked it, but now I think it's absolutely elegant. Such a great change to the combat. Speaking of combat, the finishers and hard-hitting spider moves are all here. The combat is just as good, if not better than it's ever been. It still draws an obvious and heavy inspiration from the Batman Arkham games, but since those are some of the best superhero games ever made, I have no problem with that. It's almost flawless. The only flaw I see in it is this. Sometimes the fight scenes felt a little extended compared to the first two games. I don't know if I'm just imagining it, but I really think either the enemies were just harder to beat or there were more of them in each sequence. But it's actually the other side of that coin that made it feel even more like that to me. The Mary Jane missions make a return here, except this time you actually get to fight as her. And when you're Spider-Man, you're beating these people and throwing them around with your spider strength, and they just keep getting back up. But when you're MJ, she's taking people out with one hit, and it just feels very strange, like maybe MJ should have just fought everybody by herself. There was even a later stage with MJ that suddenly made me feel like I was playing Destiny 2. Let me know in the comments if you know which part I'm talking about. I just did not see it coming at all, and I'm still on the fence about if I enjoyed those sequences or not. Again, they were streamlined and they evolved her character and made her feel a little more a part of the Spider team. I'm just not sure they struck the right power balance, especially when I felt like Spider-Man was taking longer than usual to knock people out. Speaking of power balance, the enemies in this game stay pretty well balanced with Spider-Man. They do get tougher as you progress, but you gain new abilities as you go that compensates for that. And the new abilities you gain tie into the story and its villains really well. And the story is very well crafted. Peter and MJ are very much in love in this game. They're very supportive of one another. Venom, of course, tries to turn Peter to the dark side, but there's some stuff that goes down that helps MJ cope with that in the end. That's as much as I can say without spoiling anything, but the story is very good. Honestly, the first half of the game I thought was just okay, but it really ramps up in that second half, so make sure you play through to the end, and don't miss the mid-credits and end-credits scenes, because they set up the next game. One of the things that I really liked is that both Peter and Miles deal with some very common real-world problems that make them very relatable, and Spider-Man as a comic has always kind of been that way. He has worries, fears, doubts, problems at work and school and in relationships, you know, all the stuff that is part of the human experience, and he has to deal with those things and wrestle with them and cope, and that really helps you sympathize with the character, whether it's Peter or Miles. And I think they even brought MJ and Miles' mom down to that human level too, and gave them some very real moments, and I genuinely liked that. I do have a couple of minor nitpicks about the story. For example, I think it really could have benefited from some kind of monologue or something where Kraven really explains his motivations for hunting. It just wasn't made super clear why he was there and why this was so important to him, or even how he could afford this huge private army and all their tech. I also thought it was odd how many of the villains were suddenly reformed in the game, and they actually brought this up a lot. I'm all for people in the real world getting their life together and walking a moral path and becoming productive members of society, but it wasn't just one or two villains, it was quite a few, to the point where it seemed almost unrealistic. And there were a couple of other things that I thought felt forced into the game to pander to certain demographics, but in the end, I'd give the story about an 8.5 out of 10. It was a lot of fun, and the end game content was just absolutely insane. It just kept getting crazier and crazier the longer it went on, and I mean that in the best way. Graphically, Insomniac is an expert in their field. The character models, New York City, the suit designs, all of it looks amazing, spectacular, superior. This is a jaw-dropper of a game. The major villains are superbly crafted. Peter and Miles both look shockingly good. The ray tracing in the game is a technical showpiece for the PS5. The way Venom's symbiote skin crawls and moves is incredible. I mean, it's really hard to complain about the game's visuals. As you fly on your web wings through the city on these wind streams, the thing that I noticed was that I never caught any pop-in. Everything is just there, exactly where it's supposed to be. I mean, it runs smooth as butter, even when there's 30 enemies on the screen attacking you, and the reflections are just incredibly accurate. Check out the lighting in this night shot, the reflection in the puddle, the soft glow reflecting off the hair. The hair in this game, by the way, is incredibly detailed as well. If you want to show your friends what the PS5 can do, this is the game to play. But all that said, I feel like I have to at least mention the elephant in the room. Mary Jane does in fact look different, and she's the only one. Everyone else looks like themselves from Spider-Man Remastered and Miles Morales. Peter might look slightly older, Miles has longer hair now, but everyone else is basically the same except MJ. And it's not subtle, it's really noticeable. A lot of people have said she's ugly now. I don't agree with that. I think she looks like a perfectly normal person, but her face is less attractive and not the same face as before. And I just don't think there's any good reason for that change. I don't know if they were trying to make some kind of statement, but if they were, it's a ridiculous one and almost awkward when everything else in the game looks so good. And this feels like the right time to inform any parents watching about the game's rating. This is rated T for teen. It contains blood, drug references, violence, and mild language. There is not a ton of blood, mostly small red splashes that could go unnoticed. The drug references, as far as I remember, are in some side missions, but not in the main story, and no one is using them. They're being traded for weapons. Obviously, there is violence in the game, you're fighting criminals, but one thing I will say is that Venom is, for real, a scary monster with many long, sharp teeth. And as he becomes more powerful in the game, he goes from knocking people out to bone-crunching murder. Now, they don't really depict that in any sort of graphic way, but it's happening. And then there's the language. It is mild, like a normal PG-13 superhero movie would be, but they're not hiding it, so if you don't want your kids hearing it or saying it, then I'd skip this one this holiday until they're older. And speaking of hearing things, everything in the game also sounds good. The music and sound design is excellent in this game as well. I have no complaints there at all. It's all wonderfully recorded and placed, and the music reflects the tone of every moment of the game. Mission variety is also pretty good. good. The way you switch back and forth from Miles to Peter is done really well. You have some stealth missions again, but not as many as the first two games. You get to pilot some drones at different points in the game. Obviously, there are various crimes going on in the city that you can stop. It does a pretty good job of breaking things up and keeping it interesting. I never felt like things got too repetitive. You can also complete jobs that people report to the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man app that Genki has built, and that's cool. But speaking of that, answer me this. If Spider-Man has his own app and this vast network of people around the city requesting help, why can't Genki add like a GoFundMe feature to it? I mean, he knows that Peter can't keep a job. He's too busy saving the city, and Miles is pretty much in the same boat. I kept thinking this throughout the whole game. Like, there have to be enough Spider-Man fans in the city of New York that would pay $10 a month to say, "Thank you, Spider-Man, for keeping our city safe," that Peter wouldn't have to stress about money all the time. Set it up, guys. You selflessly take care of the city. Let the city return the favor a little. By the way, if you want to help support this channel, check out my affiliate links in the description. I have Spider-Man 2 and a PS5 Spider-Man bundle down there. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but I do earn a small commission that I will reinvest back into the channel on anything that you add to your cart and purchase after clicking my link. Thanks for your help. And those are my thoughts on Marvel's Spider-Man 2. I would easily give it 9 web shooters out of 10, but what do you think of the game? Let me know in the comments, and please like, share, and subscribe. I have a long list of content I'm working on for the rest of the year, and I don't want you to miss out. Stay kind and encouraging out there, and I'll catch you on the flippity flip.